Hello and welcome. I'm going to be talking about something that I feel a lot of us humans in this world are struggling with. And it's so subtle under the surface, yet it is so strong and prevalent with how we are feeling about our life, our future, our relationship with others, and the unknown. And this is a lack of trust with the universe. Now, this has come up so many times working with other people, of course, working on myself, my own introspection, my own inner work. The root cause that I found for a lot of my difficulties had to do with a lack of trust with the universe. Now, you can imagine if we have a deep trust with the universe, it means that we trust life. It means that we trust the flow of life. It means that we can let go and we can let the universe sort of take over in a way. That doesn't mean removing free will from our life and from our ability to choose. But it is in a way to co-create with the universe and allow the universe to meet us halfway, or allow the universe to give us the signs, the synchronicities, the flow, the ability to create, and also the ability for us to tune in and listen deeply to ourselves so that we can understand how to navigate life. If we have a lack of trust, it means that we could be in fear. It means that we could also be very resistant to the flow of life. I'm going to walk through the manifestations and the common behaviors if there is a lack of trust within the unconscious self. Also, where this comes from parenting patterns to societal influences. I'm also going to touch on permacrisis, what that is. This is a new term for me, actually, that I only discovered not too long ago that I'm going to go into as well. And then at the very end, I'm going to go into guidance as far as how to regain trust within your deeper self. All right, so as I mentioned, lack of trust, I feel, is going to be part of an experience we can all relate to. We are humans. We've gone through a lot. If we've gone through anything difficult in our formative years, or if you go into past life regression, then there's going to be some type of lack of trust with the universe, with life, and really one of the origin beliefs or the false beliefs or the origin emotions that can be associated with the lack of trust is fear. So you can imagine if yourself, fear of the future or fear of the unknown or fear of worst case outcomes can show up as anxiety, resistance, self-sabotage. I go through this constantly over and over and over again. And they can come in many different levels. And I do suggest to spend some time with deep self-reflection. This work, what I'm going to talk about here, is not about blaming our past or pointing the fingers at our parents or at how we were raised. This is part of society. This is part of the hits that humanity has taken as a collective. And we have an opportunity now, by looking at ourselves a little bit differently, by removing ourselves from our experiences of regret and anger or resentment towards our past, and to look in our present moment and understand the patterns that are showing up, that are showing us that there may be a little bit of distrust under the surface. And if you know, and if you are certain that there is a lack of trust with the universe, with the flow of life, with the future, with even maybe yourself, then it is just a simple exercise of observing it and breaking the patterns from deep within. So like I said, I am going to go into some guidance at the end of this video as far as how to break these patterns, how to identify them, and set yourself up for greater trust and flow and peace in life. So we're first going to look at the manifestations and behavioral patterns from lack of trust with the universe. The first one is going to be anxiety and worry. So constantly worrying about future or outcomes. This can come in as incredible fear, afraid of the future, almost projecting the mind or the emotional self into the future and seeing a story that doesn't actually exist or hasn't even taken shape. I'm sure you've listened to this phrase many times. We tend to live in the past or the future, rarely in the present. This also goes into Buddhist philosophy as well, where we can easily move ourselves between the past and the future, or both, live in both at the same time, while not recognizing the present moment. And this is just the human biology, the human functioning of what we have to deal with here, what we have to work with. But when we cultivate presence and understand our present moment and what is happening by projecting into our future or even going into the past, then we will be able to create a better relationship with our present, therefore even seeing the patterns of what we are projecting into regarding the future outcomes. So if you find yourself in fear of the future, fear of losing out, fear of lack, fear of loss, fear of the world falling apart, then there is going to be a severe distrust of the universe. Now, the whole point of all of this is to regain trust, knowing that you are greater than all the challenges that you can ever experience. You are greater than all the pain you can ever experience. You are greater than all the illnesses you can ever experience. You are greater than all. And a lot of these fears come from within here. And I know the argument for this. People can say, well, there is war, there is poverty, there is lack, struggle, but this has been going on for decades, if not centuries. So this struggle and this lack that is embedded within our unconscious self creates the story and perpetuates this. And we as individuals, one by one, are creating this reality based on how we feel within ourselves. And if there's a lack of trust, we're all going to have a part in this bigger picture of creation. And if we start to regain trust within ourselves and let go of these past conditionings, of the fear, of the lack, of the conflict, the worry of the future, then we're going to change the future outcomes. So we can start with one by one, paying attention to how we are feeling within our own life, within our own reality. And when we focus on our own reality, it is going to have an effect outwardly and is going to grow and grow and grow. And this is the ripple effect. So we focus one by one with our own self, in our own world, in our own reality, and it will start shaping the outer world accordingly. The next one is going to be control issues, a strong need to control situations and people to feel safe. All right, if there's a lack of trust in the flow of the universe, now this can be also a lack of trust with people, a lack of trust with self, a lack of trust with life. The universe is all. So if there is a distrust with the universe, then there also is going to be the need to control and make things certain in order to avoid pitfalls that may have been experienced in the past. And this also goes into, of course, realizing that our greatest challenges are our greatest teachers and always offer us an opportunity for growth. This does require a new perspective. It does require to work through challenges in a different way, observing patterns, observing challenges, and observing modes and methods of control to hold on to and to make things almost feel safe in a way. Now, I've talked about this in many other videos as well. When we are holding on, when we are trying to control a situation or control people or control the outcome, is coming also from our conscious level of awareness or our rational thought, where we are trying to make sense of things and keep things in order. And this comes also from a safety mechanism that we have within ourselves, wanting to create a safe environment, keeping people in check, relationships, the environment, life itself, or self. So just check in, is there a form of control in any kind of way, wanting things to be done a certain way, a certain time, a certain expectation, certain relationships, etc. There could be a lack of fluidity and a lack of trust with others and a lack of trust with life, being able to let go. Being able to let go and find the fluidity with the flow of life. The next one is going to be avoidance. So avoiding new experiences or challenge due to fear of negative outcomes. This can come in many different forms. Avoidance can be numbing out. It can be disassociation. It can be avoidance in any kind of way, watching TV, distractions, social media. The fear that we have within ourselves is very strong and it is layers deep. It comes in many different forms. It comes in many different ways. I highly suggest watch my fear video that I recorded a little while back, because there are so many different types of fears and it manifests in so many different ways within ourselves, emotionally, psychologically, physically, behavior patterns, the way that we see and perceive reality. So when we are in fear of the outcome, it means that we don't trust the future. We don't trust the universe. We don't trust that we are safe and that everything is going to work out for our greatest good and greatest potential. We will also tend to skew perception on reality and try to avoid it altogether. This can happen very unconsciously. So avoidance can come in as a very unconscious response. Be very aware of this pattern. Again, it's not being hard on ourselves if we're doing it, if we're falling into that pattern, is being aware simply of these patterns that we can find ourselves in and making constructive change to build in more trust and to build in a constructive new habit that is going to allow you to move forward with, again, more trust and ease. The next one is cynicism, a negative outlook on life, expecting bad things to happen. Right. So this is a behavioral pattern. So if one person has gone through a difficult, maybe childhood or repeated shocks to the system or repeated patterns that never got resolved, then one can then feel, or that is basically what to expect in the future. So there could be a harshness on life. There could be looking at life through the lens of cynicism, difficulty, criticalness as well. I've already covered this also in the critic archetype. I highly suggest watching that as well, where one can have a negative perspective on life. The lens of perception is quite significant, and I see it constantly, especially now with the elections and the states, which I don't really want to get into truthfully, but you can see that as a perfect example of how people can see reality completely differently based on how they are within themselves. You know, their own shadow aspects, their own unconscious aspects, their fears, their perfectionism, their criticisms. They can come up and completely distort the lens, and people start to see reality completely differently from one another. They see it differently. It's just amazing to witness this. I've gone through this myself, where I was very critical on life. I was very hard on life, but I had a great fear deep down within my shadow, within my unconscious self, that was preventing me from trusting, preventing me from seeing reality in the true light that it is. And so again, by breaking through these layers and these patterns that we have deep within, we're going to start to peel back those layers to uncover our inner truth and our relationship with the universe, with all knowing that we are connected with the universe. We are an expression of the universe. And the more that we return into our true self by breaking through these layers, the greater trust we will have, right? And so this does stem into many different aspects of our life. The next one is going to be self-sabotage. So engaging in behaviors that undermine one's success or happiness, right? So self-sabotage is very common. It can come in many different forms, just like fear can. Fear is going to be at the origin of self-sabotage. Self-sabotage can be continually anything from making excuses, pointing oneself in a direction that isn't going to be advantageous or supportive for the success that they want. There could be many different forms of self-sabotage, all of a sudden stopping or giving up just before they are about to succeed. Therefore, also, of course, play into the lack of trust and the fluidity. And so when there's a self-sabotage, it means that we are halting the process of life. It means that we are essentially sabotaging our success. And I don't want to say successes in many different forms. I would say sabotaging our ability to flow with life, to enjoy life, to create life, to even go through the challenges and finding the opportunities and continually moving forward with more fluidity and trust. The next one is going to be perfectionism. So setting unrealistically high standards to avoid failure. So perfectionism really is, it basically is a fear of failure. It's a fear of being seen. It's also, there could be an underlying correlation with shame under there as well. So maybe not only fear, but shame could be at the origin, right? So a fear of failure, a fear of being seen, a fear of not being good enough. So constantly being having a perfectionistic standard or perfectionistic behaviors on oneself or towards life itself. And therefore, again, there's a lack of trust and a lack of acceptance with self, with one's environment, with one's actions and who they are. And that is going to also play into, like I said, the origin of I am good enough. And with the I am good enough, there's also going to be a relationship with I trust. I trust that I am good enough. I trust that I am going to be okay with who I am. I have nothing to fear. I trust the universe. The next one is going to be difficulty in relationships. So struggling to connect with others due to a fear of betrayal or abandonment. Right. Abandonment and rejection from early childhood is very common. Can be rejection or abandonment emotionally, physically, or psychologically. So this fear of experiencing this pain again that has not been resolved will play into the interpersonal relationships within one's life, not being able to trust others. And remember, the universe is all. It reflects in our relationships. It reflects in our level of success or havingness or otherwise. So it's going to affect every area of our life. And interpersonal relationships are our greatest teachers. They are the most complex aspects of our being. It's easy to be in isolation, which this can drive someone into isolation. But we don't get to grow if we're not experiencing life and others. And through relationships, we also get to identify what is at the origin of our distrust. Why can't we trust other people? Why can't we trust love? Why can't we open our heart? Why can't we be vulnerable? Why can't we be around people? And also, if we get triggered in relationships, why can't we work through it with more trust and ease and understanding? So this is going to come in to relationships no matter what. I feel interpersonal relationships are our greatest teachers. Family, close relationships, love relationships, anything that also is connected to vulnerability and matters of the heart. The next one is going to be resentment. So holding on to grudges or feeling like life is unfair. So resentment has a strong correlation or a strong tie to the past events, what hasn't worked, the injustices, the difficulties that one has gone through. There is a very strong tie and connection and holding on to these past events that results in a great deal of resentment, therefore doesn't allow for one to move on from that and open up and trusting the future and trusting the universe. Physical symptoms I'm going to add in here as well. Stress-related issues like headaches, stomach problems, or chronic fatigue. However, there are going to be way more physical symptoms and very specific physical symptoms that I actually am going to start archiving in my new Substack account. So make sure to follow me over on the Odyssey of Self. There is a free subscription and a paid subscription, but I'm going to be archiving the body-mind correlation with a lack of trust. So that is going to be part of this. When you understand these correlations of the past events, what has been created within the unconscious self, and then how the body is communicating this unresolved lack of trust, you'll be able to heal yourself and move on and cultivate a greater level of trust. And of course, your body is going to respond accordingly, therefore moving into a very strong ability to heal and to transform. So that is going to be more on my Substack account. If you want access to those files, if you want to learn more and deepen your practice, go follow the link below and I'll see you there. All right, so let's go into the causes of lack of trust in the universe. So the first one is going to be negative past experiences. This can include traumatic events or consistent failures that can lead to a belief that life is unpredictable and unsafe. Now, that belief is a false belief. And if you've caught some of my other videos, we have true beliefs within ourselves. Our true beliefs come from our pure, true self, what you have been born into this world as, a light being, a expression of the divine, being part of all that is. Now, when you are connected with that, you will know in your deepest heart of hearts that you are safe, that you are greater than all of your challenges, all of the illnesses, all of the difficulties. You have the ability to rise above any difficulties that life throws at you. However, what can happen when one has not resolved these false beliefs or this false belief within the unconscious, there will be a constant reoccurrence of this feeling that life is unsafe and unpredictable. The next cause is going to be unresolved trauma. So past emotional wounds can create a lens of distrust. So it kind of goes into the first one actually, but this one is more of a specific traumatic event that you can look at or that you may be able to identify. So these are all about looking back in the past a little bit, seeing the patterns, recognizing the correlation between past events and what's happening in the present moment to unlock some of these aspects within ourselves, healing, resolving, forgiving, letting go, regaining more trust or incorporating more trust into one's life is going to help override some of these false beliefs within. Another cause of lack of trust can be cognitive distortions. So patterns of negative thinking, such as catastrophizing or black and white thinking. This does have a correlation with trauma and with repeated patterns or difficult patterns from the past. This can be a behavioral pattern. This can come from false beliefs as well, when one only looks at the world as black or white, or through the lens of negative thinking, or thinking that everything is falling apart or the world is unsafe, these big dramatic events, because their system has been shocked in that way in some form. Or they have picked it up from maybe their caregivers, from society since early life. We live in a very dramatic environment. If it is through media, if it is through world events, we get pumped this information constantly. So we are, as I mentioned, in a time now where we get to break these patterns. However, we do need to distance ourselves from this type of media, which I'm going to get to in a moment, and any kind of stimulation that's going to activate the feeling, the sensation that everything is falling apart. The worst case scenario is looking at life through the lens of negativity, pointing out the flaws and looking at life only through black and white. Now we have a full dimension range, a spectrum of ways of looking at life when you really get into this. But the more you dive into this, you realize how deep we can go and how multidimensional we really are, and how we have the opportunity, the ability, and the power within ourselves to return to this full trust, this connection with source, with love, with life, with all that is. The other cause of a lack of trust is going to be cultural influences. So growing up in an environment that emphasizes fear and caution over trust and openness. Yeah, this is going to be cultural, societal. This is going to be being raised in an environment. This goes into permacrisis as well, which I'll touch on in a moment, where one could be raised in an environment that has never been safe, where there's always been constant traumatic blows and things thrown at this person over and over and over again, then of course they're going to not be able to even feel or sense or connect with anything different than what they've been experiencing. And the final one is going to be comparison. So constantly comparing oneself to others and feeling inadequate. And this really does come from a separation from self. When we are not connected with our true self, with our whole self, then we are going to be living an outwardly experience. We're going to be looking outward. We are going to be not only projecting, but we're going to be comparing and experiencing completely based on our outer world experiences, not based on the connection with our inner one. When we have developed greater self-awareness and wholeness within ourselves, we start looking at the world differently. We stop comparing ourselves. We stop being hard on ourselves. We develop more compassion and more a greater sense of self and inner knowing and peace within. Okay, so next we're going to go into the parenting patterns that are going to lead to a lack of trust. Now, this is going to be parenting pattern. This is not looking at pointing the finger at parents as that they've done something wrong or that they are the cause of all of our problems. Not at all. We have all gone through a lot. All of us, your parents, your grandparents. This is specifically looking at patterns from our formative years so that we can make sense of the patterns that we are carrying through. That is it. And by identifying some of these patterns, we can see them within ourselves and we can begin to unravel from them. But we need to see the patterns from our parents or from our caregivers or from our environment from when we were children in order to break the cycle, in order to have those aha moments and the moments of clarity so that we can really set ourselves free. The first one is going to be overprotective parenting. So shielding children from challenges can prevent them from developing resilience. All right, this is the parent, and God bless them, because the parents who are protective are protecting their child because they care, because they love them, because they want them to be safe. There can also be overprotective parenting where the child may be overprotected and then felt that the world is not safe because the parents are overprotecting because of fear, because the parents do not trust the universe, the parents do not trust the world, or the parents do not trust the child. You know, as children, we do need to go through our challenges because we need to learn on our own how to get through challenges, how to overcome obstacles, and how to even move through pain and understand what hurt is, or understand what mistakes are, or understand what achievements are, right? So God bless parents who are overprotective. Again, I'm not speaking down to anyone here at all whatsoever of these parenting patterns, but it is coming from a place in this regard, coming from a place of fear. A lack of trust of the world and a lack of trust with the environment or the universe as well. So there is a fine line with this as well. There will be a requirement to be safe and to be smart and to be observant and discerning with life, but not to the point where the fear is being passed down to the child. So if you can see this pattern within yourself, for example, you will be able to unwind from this pattern and integrate more trust within yourself and within life. The next one is going to be inconsistent parenting. So this is unpredictable responses from caregivers can create insecurity in children. This can be emotional insecurity, again, psychological insecurity, physical environment insecurity, feeling unstable. This is a repeated cyclical type of environment where the child may feel that over time, it just simply is not to be trusted. The environment is not stable, it's not consistent, therefore providing the child a lack of certainty or consistency or feeling of security and trust in that particular environment. Therefore, of course, being able to develop into adult years of feeling the same type of pattern within oneself. The next is going to be criticism and neglect, focusing on what a child does wrong rather than encouraging and supporting them. Right. So if a child is constantly being criticized or being told what they are doing is wrong or being punished, this goes into the right versus wrong video that I created a little while ago, then they're going to have a very strong, deeply embedded feeling of shame or guilt that they're not doing things enough, that they are not enough, that they're not doing things right. And so therefore, they may develop a lack of trust with themselves and with others, especially if they've been punished a lot in childhood. There may be also a lack of trust with relationships or with the universe, especially if the punishment came from their caregivers. The next one is going to be fear-based parenting. So instilling fear about the world, emphasizing danger over safety and opportunity. So if the parents have struggled, if they had seen horrible things, if they have been influenced by media or by other world events, and their fear is projected onto the child in any kind of way, even through the children observing family behavioral patterns, then the child can, of course, carry that same fear into adulthood themselves, feeling like there's a lack of trust with the world. Now, if we haven't felt trust, if we have felt trust as soul beings, as that being connected with the divine, with the universe, maybe not in our human form, we know what it feels like to trust. But being humans and being human in our human form, we have a very strong influence of fear that is constantly in our unconscious self that overrides our trust with the universe. And sometimes we don't even know what trust feels like. Sometimes we don't even know what it feels like to let ourselves go and to just flow and to trust. What does that even feel like? So I'm going to go into the exercises towards the end, but keep this in mind, because the feeling of trust is going to be something that a lot of us have never experienced, but we are returning to that. And this is going to be one of the greatest feats that we can overcome. And the final one is going to be lack of emotional support. Not validating a child's feelings can lead to feelings of isolation and distrust. The emotional connection with us as human beings is so vital. I cannot express this enough. This is something I had to learn as an adult, and actually, honestly, only until the last few years, of what it was like to connect with my emotional self and how important emotional connection is. Being seen, being heard, the emotional response between two people or between others is so vital. And we have a very strong removal of our emotional connections in humanity. We are coming back to it slowly, but in childhood, a lot of us haven't had that emotional connection. Again, being seen, being heard, being felt, being understood, that real close bond between a parent and a child. And when that bond is broken, there can be a feeling of rejection, there can be a feeling of abandonment, and there can be a feeling of isolation and a lack of trust. When we are returning to love, to unconditional love, that is a form of trust. But we have to return to unconditional love and trust within ourselves first. All right, so I'm going to touch on societal influences that can also be a factor of the lack of trust within our unconscious self. The first one is going to be media influence. Constant exposure to negative news and sensationalized stories can foster a belief that the world is dangerous and unpredictable. The next one is going to be cultural norms. Societies that prioritize individualism or competition over community can lead to feelings of isolation and distrust. Economic uncertainty, fluctuations in the economy, job insecurity, and financial crisis can create a pervasive sense of instability. Political instability, Frequent changes in leadership policies or societal conflicts can lead to a general distrust in systems and institutions. And finally, social comparison. The rise of social media amplifies the tendency to compare oneself to others, which can undermine self-esteem and foster feelings of inadequacy. I'm also going to quickly touch on permacrisis, which I already did mention earlier, but I'm going to go into the definition just so that you also understand what permacrisis is and how many cultures in this world are dealing with permacrisis that completely wipes out trust altogether after a long period of time. This is a prolonged state of instability and uncertainty where individuals and communities face a continuous series of crises, leading to feelings of helplessness and anxiety. Now, this can be war, it can be environmental, it can be financial, it can be many different factors that can be very cyclical or very ongoing, leading to a constant feeling and a constant fear and anxiety about the future and about safety. All right, so let's go into the guidance for regaining trust in the universe. Before we get into the different exercises, I do want to mention that awareness heals. Now, this is taken from the work of Dr. Michael Lincoln, who I reference often, but awareness truly does heal. Being aware of ourselves, not critical towards ourselves, not angry towards ourselves, but being aware. Looking at the patterns, observing our thoughts, observing our words, where they are coming from, and what clues they are giving us about the answers that reside within our deeper self. When we are aware of our repeating patterns, we will be able to understand where there is a lack of trust and where we can reverse some of this fear and anxiety and stress and maybe a lack of safety and security into a greater sense of trust and flow with life. The first is going to be mindfulness and meditation. I know I mention this often, but practicing mindfulness can center thoughts and reduce anxiety. Meditation, meditation, meditation. When you are allowing yourself to tune in with your deeper self, you are then cultivating a greater inward sensory experience. You are going to heighten your levels of awareness with your thoughts, with your emotions, and with your body. Through meditation and mindfulness, your awareness will increase, your senses will increase, and you'll also drop into a greater state of calm and inner understanding. Again, understanding these patterns from a deep place within, and of course, regaining a greater sense of compassion with yourself and with life itself. You can also integrate trust meditations to bring trust into your heart, into your nervous system, into your body, and find a place of stillness to allow yourself to feel what trust feels like. Remember, this is a new experience for a lot of us. What does trust feel like within yourself? That is going to be the biggest indicator, the greatest indicator is how does trust feel within yourself? And it may take a while to slowly integrate this into your body, into your heart, into your being, which is okay. Give yourself some time and keep going at it because this will be part of overriding the unconscious self, but through mindfulness and meditation, you will be able to achieve this. The next one is challenging negative thoughts. So identify and reframe negative beliefs about the world and oneself. Okay, this is again, awareness heals. So being aware of the thoughts when they arise. When we have a trigger in our life, if it is maybe a loss of our career, maybe things didn't work out the way we were hoping, maybe a relationship fell apart, maybe there was a relationship conflict, trust will be triggered, or lack of trust will be triggered. Trigger events are the best ways or best times to identify what has not been addressed within the unconscious self. When one becomes triggered, you can go within immediately and catch it right away. Now, it can come in as a complete override of the system with thoughts, with emotions, with words, with behaviors, maybe anger, maybe fear. That is the best time to stop and to challenge yourself, to look within and observe where the root cause, where the origin of these thoughts are truly coming from. Everyone is an actor on our stage. Life is an actor on our stage. And we get to identify these false beliefs through life situations that we encounter. So it is going to take a little bit of wrestling and a little bit of reflection, but this will create a great impact in your life. The next one is going to be embrace vulnerability. So accept that uncertainty is part of life and be open to experiences, both good and bad. I don't want to say good and bad because there really isn't such a thing. They're just different variations, different degrees of the same polarization, the difficult, the easy going, the joyful, the fun. So we have these extreme experiences of the spectrum to work with and to experience as part of the human experience. And by looking at life through different perspectives in this way, we'll be able to see the challenges as for the gifts that they offer us if we look at them through the lens of trust. And trust will need to be incorporated into this practice so that you can overcome challenges with more trust with the universe, and that the universe has your back and has your best interest at heart, and that you are being set up for something great. Even the challenges do offer us always some really great gifts if we choose to see them. The next one is going to be set realistic goals. So break down goals to manageable steps to build confidence. If we set goals that are going from 0 to 1,000, which isn't such a bad thing, that's kind of how I would say used to work. But when we set our goals really high right off the bat without a game plan of all the little incremental steps along the way, then we are going to set ourselves up for disappointment. We're going to lose trust within the process. We're going to lose trust within ourselves. And I also have to add, if we are approaching our goals or what we are desiring or wanting from desperation, from anger, from resentment, from ego, we're going to set ourselves up for failure. Not only failure, but we're going to set ourselves up for disappointment. And through that, though, we can still learn where we are having a bit of distrust, or where there is a lack of trust with the universe and with life, and how to make improvements. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to learn through these challenges. This is how we also make these improvements. We constantly are adjusting, and our body, our central nervous system, our unconscious is going to need time to integrate all this, by the way, as an FYI. So don't be afraid to set those high goals, but just bring it down into bite-sized pieces to get you there, and also be open to unexpected changes along the way. This is part of the universe working with us, and it's going to be also up for us to be open to those synchronicities. And that's where the trust comes in. When we are open to synchronicities, when we trust, we are going to be open to synchronicities. Cultivating gratitude is another exercise. So focusing on the positive aspects of life, and practice gratitude to shift perspective. Gratitude, I'm sure you have heard of this, and maybe you practice it as well, will allow yourself to trust more. When we appreciate our life in certain ways, the smallest aspects of our life, or the big moments, or the beauty of maybe nature, or our room, or ourselves, or maybe something that happened during the day that brought us a bit of joy and a bit of love. When we welcome that in, when we allow ourselves to completely enjoy it and bring it into our life without stopping it, then we are going to be able to make more of it. We are going to be able to enjoy more of it. So also be aware if there is a moment of blocking the joy and the fulfillment and the flow of the good. If there is a block, if there is resistance, that is going to be a little bit of a lack of trust in there. So you could even observe it from that perspective as well. When you are practicing gratitude, is there resistance? Is there negativity? Is there doubt? Then that's going to give you a big indicator that there could be a lack of trust in there somewhere. Again, bite-sized segments, just day by day, integrating it a little bit at a time will help you open yourself up more to trust, of course, but also to see the unfoldings of your life. The next one is going to be take small risks. So gradually expose yourself to new situations to rebuild confidence and trust in outcomes. Step by step, just allow yourself to try life a little bit differently. Take a little bit of risk, step out of your comfort zone, do something a bit different, open your heart. Say yes to life, whatever it is, however it lands with you. Take a little bit of risk on yourself and try life a little bit differently. Approach it with the feeling of trust. Approach it with the feeling of an open mind, an open heart, and just keep the momentum going in the smallest ways possible. And remember, this is about retraining our body. This is about retraining our unconscious self, our central nervous system, our emotions, our false beliefs, our true beliefs, awakening our true beliefs so that we can enjoy it more and we can eventually find more and more and more flow and more reasons to trust. All right, so I hope this offered a bit more guidance on your path forward. Trust is going to be one of the biggest underlying factors that we can all work on. It can show up, like I said, a lack of trust can show up in many different ways, but we can reverse this. This is going to set yourself up for more flow, more fluidity, more openness, and more confidence with yourself and with your path in life, and of course, with your relationship with the universe. All right, so I hope this offered some additional guidance on your path forward. Don't forget to find me on Substack. The link is going to be below in the description box, and I look forward to seeing you there. Take care.